Welcome back to This Week's Uncensored, the show where we say what the mainstream press is too polite to say, and we go where the story actually leads. I'm your host, Stevie B, and today we're going straight to South Florida because what is happening in the city of North Miami Beach right now is one of the most brazen, most reckless, and frankly most suspicious abuses of local government power I have seen in a long time. We're talking about a city commission that hired a man knowingly who had already been fired from his last city manager job. A man who, by his own admission, didn't even meet the minimum qualifications for the position. A man now facing a federal civil rights lawsuit, a state whistleblower complaint, and $1 million defamation suit, all within his first 6 months on the job. And they handed him a $260,000 salary to do it. So the question we're asking today on This Week Uncensored is simple. Why? Because when you look at the full picture, the backroom maneuvering, the silencing of dissent, the weaponization of a city investigation against the one official who said no, this doesn't look like bad judgment. It looks like a plan. So let's get into it. First, let's set the scene. North Miami Beach is a city of about 45,000 people in Miami-Dade County. It's been in a leadership crisis for years. 4 different people have filled the city manager role since March of 2023 alone. The average tenure, under 1 year. Residents are frustrated. The city has a $5.5 million structural operating deficit. The water treatment plant has issues. The place is, by all accounts, a goddamn mess. So when the commission announced a formal search for a permanent city manager in late 2025, residents were desperate for stability. They wanted someone competent, experienced, and here's a wild concept, not currently embroiled in a scandal. What they got was Darvin Williams. Now, let me tell you about this guy, Darvin Williams, because his resume reads like a cautionary tale that somehow got submitted as a job application. Williams was the city manager of Opa-locka, a small financially troubled city just north of Miami. And his time there was, to put it generously, eventful. In the summer of 2024, whistleblower complaints were filed against him. The Opa-locka City Commission tried to remove him, not once, but twice, before finally succeeding with a 3-1 vote in October 2024. He was fired, given the boot. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because after Williams was fired, the city of Opa-locka discovered that this motherfucker opened up 17 bank accounts in the city's name at a financial institution the city didn't even do business with. 17 bank accounts, unauthorized. Opa-locka Commissioner Natasha Irvin, who had been pushing to hold Williams accountable, put it plainly when she later spoke about before the North Miami Beach Commission. She said, and I'm quoting here, "After giving Darvin Williams a contract, everything went awry. Darvin terminated employees without due process. He even terminated one employee while he was away fulfilling his duty as an Army reservist. She called him, in no certain terms, Satan. And yet, despite this glowing review given by the former commissioner, his former employer, the North Miami Beach City Commission looked at all of this, looked at the 17 unauthorized bank accounts, looked at the whistleblower complaints, looked at the employees fired without due process and said, yep, that's our guy. That's our guy." Now, to be fair, not everyone on that commission was on board. The only naysayer on that commission was Mayor Michael Joseph, the only elected official in that room with the spine to say no. He voted against Williams at every turn, and he was explicit about why. He told the commission, I want you to really hear this, he told the commission, "There is a lot of concerning stuff in some of these background checks that I am fearful, if it does get out, would be an embarrassment to our city." He reviewed those background checks. He saw what was in them, and he warned his colleagues. They ignored him. After the vote, Mayor Joseph said publicly that Williams publicly stated that he did not meet the minimum qualifications for the position. Let that sink in for a minute. Just think about that. The man they hired publicly said himself he wasn't qualified. And four commissioners, Lynn Sue, Jay Chernoff, Daniela Jean, and Fortuna Smuckler, voted yes anyway. Attorney Michael Pizzi, who now represents multiple people suing Williams, said it best. If the city of North Miami Beach commissioners had simply done a Google search, they would have known that this is what was going to happen. A simple Google search. That's all it would have taken. So, he gets hired. William gets hired. He gets sworn in on February 4th, 2026. He gets a $260,000 base salary, a $1,000 a month car allowance, a $115 monthly cell phone stipend. He is, by any measure, very well compensated. And then, almost immediately, the wheels start coming off. Because by late February, he's already telling his chief of staff, Marlene Monestime, a woman who had served the city for nearly 4 years and was herself a finalist for the city manager position, that her job is being eliminated, effective immediately. No process, no civil service procedures followed, just you're done. Monestime filed a federal civil rights lawsuit under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, alleging that Williams deprived her of her constitutionally protected property interest in her continued employment without due process, in violation of the 5th and 14th Amendments. Her attorney says she was, quote, organizationally worked out the door. Williams, for his part, claims he offered her another position. She declined. But her attorney says that position was a demotion in all but name, a way to push her out while maintaining the appearance of process. But the Monestime lawsuit was just the beginning. Kerlin McHenry was the interim director of public works for North Miami Beach. By all accounts, she was excellent at her job, described in a letter of recommendation as innovative and results-driven and highly respected. Then she made the mistake of doing her job too well. She flagged a series of procurement and accounting concerns to Williams, and within hours, not days, not weeks, hours, you know city government don't work that fast. Within hours, police officers and HR reps showed up at her door. She was demoted and then fired. Her attorney, Michael Pizzi, filed a notice of intent to sue, alleging violations of the Florida Whistleblower Statute, abuse of power, and violations of federal, state, and local law. The filing states that her treatment was part of a coordinated effort to remove her from employment in retaliation for her protective complaints and whistleblower activity, while treating her differently than similarly situated male employees. McHenry herself described the atmosphere inside City Hall in terms that should alarm every single resident of North Miami Beach. She said, "It is a fear zone. Everyone's afraid of Darvin Williams in the city of North Miami Beach." And then there's the defamation lawsuit. Remember Natasha Irvin, the Opa-locka commissioner who called Williams out before the North Miami Beach Commission, the one who tried to hold him accountable in Opa-locka, the one who gave Mr. Williams such a glowing recommendation in front of the commission? Williams allegedly responded to her accountability efforts by telling third parties, city staff, media outlets, anyone who would listen, that Irvin had embezzled money and stole funds from Opa-locka. Allegations that Irvin says are knowingly false and made with pure malice. In May 2026, Irvin filed a defamation lawsuit seeking more than $1 million in damages. She told CBS Miami, "I just need to clear my name so my residents will know that I stole not one penny from Opa-locka." So, to recap, we have a federal civil rights lawsuit, a state whistleblower complaint, and $1 million defamation suit, all within the first 6 months, all pointing to the same pattern of behavior: retaliation, intimidation, and the weaponization of authority against anyone who dares to question Darvin Williams. Now, Here's where the story goes from troubling to conspiratorial. And I use that word deliberately in every sense of the word because the evidence supports it. Remember Mayor Joseph, the one dissenting vote, the man who warned his colleagues, who reviewed the background checks, who stood alone against this hire? Shortly after Williams was installed, the same commissioners who championed Williams authorized a $50,000 independent investigation into Mayor Joseph's conduct. The investigation was conducted by the Algo law firm, and it produced a 32-page interim report alleging that Joseph improperly interfered in administrative operations, influenced vendor selections, and, most dramatically, asked a city employee to alter official interview recordings of city manager candidate Marlene Monestime. The commission voted to send that report to the state attorney's office and the Florida Commission on Ethics. Now, on its face, those are some serious allegations, and they deserve scrutiny. But here's what makes this reek of a setup. Court filings in a Monestime lawsuit allege that Williams himself, reviewed and commented on the findings of that very investigation while it was being developed. The city manager, the man whose hiring the mayor opposed, was allegedly in the room shaping the report that was then used to destroy the mayor's credibility. Think about that. The man hired over the mayor's objection allegedly helped craft the investigation designed to neutralize the mayor who objected to his hiring. If that's not a conspiracy, it is the most extraordinary coincidence in the history of South Florida municipal government. And South Florida has a lot of extraordinary coincidences. Now let's talk about what Williams has been doing with his expanded authority since taking office. In March 2026, he quietly assumed the additional role of interim chief financial officer. Puts himself in charge of the money. A memo to the mayor and commission dated June 17th confirms he took on those responsibilities himself. A city manager who was already facing allegations of financial misconduct from his previous job, unauthorized bank accounts, misappropriation concerns, has now also made himself the chief financial officer of the city with a $5.5 million deficit and a budget exceeding $100 million. No competitive process, no commission vote on the dual role, just a memo saying essentially, hey, I'm in charge of the money now too, guys. Where they do that at? Let's take a step back and look at this full picture because this is what This Week's Uncensored is here to do. You have a city commission that in December 2025 began a selection process that was already irregular, with commissioners submitting more names than allowed, and the entire process conducted with minimal transparency despite repeated demands from civic watchdog group Wake Up NMB, Wake Up North Miami Beach. You have 4 commissioners who coalesced around a candidate with a documented history of firing employees without due process, opening unauthorized bank accounts, and retaliating against whistleblowers. You have a mayor, the one person who did his homework, being systematically marginalized, investigated, and referred to state prosecutors, with the city manager he opposed allegedly helping to shape the case against him. You have a city manager who, within months of being hired, has already replicated the same exact behavior that got him fired from his last job at Opa-locka, and who has now also appointed himself as the city's top financial officer. And you have employees living in what one of them describes as a fear zone, afraid to speak up, afraid to flag concerns, afraid to do their jobs. The question is not whether something is wrong in North Miami Beach. Something is clearly freaking demonstrably, catastrophically wrong. The question is who benefits? Because someone always benefits, and you gotta follow the benefits. You follow the benefits, you know who's pulling the strings. And in this case, the beneficiaries appear to be the commissioners who installed a city manager willing to do their bidding, including apparently helping to build a case against the mayor who stood in their way. Now, before we close, I want to give credit where credit is due because Mayor Michael Joseph has been consistent and courageous throughout this whole process, through this saga. But his statement to Local 10 News says it all. And he says, the City Commission faces a decision to stop Mr. Williams' disruptive management decisions or remain silent and complicit while we continue to lose good and qualified employees. And Attorney Michael Pizzey, who now represents multiple victims of this administration, has been equally direct. Right now, the city of North Miami Beach, Mrs. McHenry, and other employees are really being terrorized by the new administration. Terrorized by a city manager in a city of 45,000 people in 2026. The residents of North Miami Beach deserve better. They deserve a city commission that does its due diligence. They deserve a hiring process that isn't a political transaction. They deserve a city manager who doesn't arrive with a trail of lawsuits and a history of opening unauthorized bank accounts. And they deserve elected officials who, when a colleague stands up and says, I've seen the background check and this is a mistake, actually listen. Instead, they got Darvin Williams and 4 commissioners who, for reasons that have yet to be fully explained, wanted him there. We will be watching North Miami Beach closely, and we will be back when, not if, when this story develops further. This is This Week's Uncensored. I'm your host, Stevie B. Stay informed, stay angry, stay tuned.